Yo, what's going on, Dragon Ballers? Welcome back to another episode of the strategy series. In today's video, we're going to talk about how to play Android 21. I've actually gotten quite a few requests to do more how to play videos, so I figured what better deck to do it with than Android 21. I played this deck a lot, played it a lot in set 8 and set 9. Put it down for a little while because Surge format came around. That was pretty strong in terms of Blue Green Piccolo and Red Yellow Surge Goku. Then we got monocolor format for quite a while, but now with Evolution Booster, there are a lot of new toys for Android 21 to play with. I've been testing it quite a bit. I actually have a full deck list and play guide on the Patreon, so you can see, exactly why I play what I play. You can see the exact curvature of the deck. But today we're going to talk about more of that how to play stuff, the mulligans, how to play the turn by turn. Your list will probably look pretty similar if you're playing the ramp version, but I do play some interesting tech cards you might want to check out. But if you want to support the channel, Patreon's a great way to do that. You get to see all my competitive content, my articles, and some of my more competitive decks and play-by-play guides. So with that being said, we're going to get into how to play Android 21. We'll start with some of the mulligan strategies. So Android 21 is pretty interesting in terms of mulligan because there are better cards to keep going first and better cards to keep going second. So let's talk about some of the more general ones. Some of the really good cards to keep your opening hand. We have Vegeta Energy Absorber. Not every list plays this card. I've been a fan of it ever since around set 9. I do like the card a lot because the leader inherently untaps energy and gets you those draws. And if you don't know what he does, real quick, when you do untap energy during your opponent's turn, you draw a card. So you could play this in just about any blue deck that plays like Dimension Magic or Sensu Bean, but I really like it in 21 because, again, your leader inherently triggers it, as where in other blue decks you usually have to rely on another card to trigger it. So 21 and this card have great synergy. But anyways, you want to keep this card and Restoration, another really good card to get you ramped when you have Android 16 Energy Amplification in your hand. So if you see this combination of cards, whether you go first or second, I think it's actually really good. So what you'll do is on your turn 2, you'll play Vegeta Energy Absorber for the 2 energy, go back to your opponent's turn, you'll draw an additional card because of Energy Absorber's effect, and you have the energy untapped, which sets you up very nicely for Restoration and Energy 16 and Energy Amplification. So the thing with this deck back then, at least in set 9, if you guys saw my profile all the way back then, I played like the draft box 4, I think it was, the Zamasu engine, like with the 3-drop Goku Black, plays the old 7-drop Zamasu. You had a lot of turn 2 plays in the deck. You could play Vegeta Energy Absorber, you could play Android 16 Energy Amplification, or you could play the 3-drop Goku Black for its Activate Battle of 2 energy. In this version of the deck, we're not playing the Zamasu stuff, but we are playing 2 of our best turn 2 plays. And the crazy thing about this combo is you get to play both of your best turn 2s on turn 2. One on your turn 2 and one on your opponent's turn after that. So that's what makes this combo really, really good in my opinion. So if you see these cards in your opening hand, I would definitely consider keeping them. But anyways, let's take a look at what we want to keep when we go first. So if we were to go first, right? Again, if I see any of those cards in my opening hand, I will keep them. But one card I really want in my opening hand when I go first, and sometimes when I go second, is Android 21 Bad Omen. The nice thing about Android 21 in general is that you have many ways to win now between this Android 21, the Super 17 Checkland, which we'll check out in just a second, and Android 17 and 18 Siblings Revive. So seeing Android 21 on your turn 1 where your opponent doesn't get tokens, so you can't really do too much with the tokens, you charge it tapped, you're kind of good to go. Going second, you can still keep this in your hand, but if you're playing in something more aggressive, you might actually want to look for your Unison, as well as either SS2 Trunks Heroic Prospect or God Sealing Technique Trunks. The reason is because you can actually play this down if you've gone second on your turn 1, because when your opponent goes first at the start of their main phase, they will get 2 clone tokens, right? So you give them the 2 tokens, they do their turn 1, whatever, and if they're playing something more aggressive, like maybe a red Broly, maybe a dark Broly, you're going to want to look for your Unison. And to have a good starter with that, you could go for Super 17 Hell's Ultimate Weapon, but you even could keep an Android 21 Bad Omen, because by the time you eat a token, you get the energy untap, right? So keeping either of those in your hand is really good. But again, if you have the Super Android 13 Never-Ending Bloodlust, you're going to want to play that on your turn 2, and you're going to want to have a copy. Let's go look through the deck and find them really quick. You're going to want either your God Sealing Technique or your SS2 Trunks Heroic Prospect. So that's a really good setup. It is a pretty specific opening hand, don't get me wrong, but again, in some matchups you might need the Trunks Heroic Prospect. In other matchups you might need the God Sealing. It's going to be pretty rare that you need both in a given matchup, but this is a pretty good opening hand to look for if you're playing against something faster. If you're not really playing against anything too fast, you can definitely just stack up on, I'm going to put these Trunkses away really quick. You can definitely stack up on a Unison. Again, you don't really need it if you go first because you can't really play it turn 1, but you can have it just in case. But I would say these 5 cards right here, the Super 17, the 21, the Energy Absorber, the Restoration, and the Android 16 Energy Amplification, I would say these are really good cards to look out for, whether you go first or second. And then again, if you go second against something a little bit faster, a little bit more aggressive, your Super 13 Unison is going to be a really, really good card to keep. All right, guys, just resetting here a little bit. We're actually going to go a few turns with the deck, and this is what's called goldfishing, right? Like if you're playing a deck without an opponent, but you're kind of just trying to see how the, how the deck curves out, how the deck plays out. You can kind of guesstimate how the game will go, and you can even approximate some damage you'll take during a certain turn. That's what we're going to kind of do here right now. So let's just say we go first, right? Our opponent doesn't get clone tokens, so we don't get a great draw with our leader. Even though our leader isn't activate main draw, that is one of the more busted things in Dragon Ball Super, when your leader doesn't actually have to attack to gain advantages. But on turn 1, we can't do that. So like I said, we've looked for certain cards in our mulligan, and yes, this is a pretty perfectly sculpted hand, but I'll talk about some variations of things you can do if you don't have exactly this. But since we do have 21 Bad Omen on turn 1, you do play 4 copies of it, or you should at least. So we'll charge that on our turn 1. And we'll pretty much say go to our opponent. Again, we can't really play the Unison on our turn 1 if we go first, so I didn't, aim to keep it in this mulligan. Our opponent will go, they'll get clone tokens. Now, this is where things get interesting. Let's say they're playing a regular run-of-the-mill mid-range deck, right? So we'll probably take 1 damage from their leader, right? Their leader will just attack and they'll draw, do all that good stuff. Now, depending on what you're playing against and who you're playing against, they may or may not be super aggressive with the clone tokens. Now, let's say you're watching this video and you don't actually care too much about playing 21. I'll give you a quick tip for how I like to at least deal with 21. I'll actually do this. I'll actually attack with my 2 tokens if I'm the opponent. I'll put them at 5. And I'll leave them there, because generally Android 21 doesn't have great ways to take their own life. Normally they don't really play cards that do that. So I'll actually leave them at 5, and 9 times out of 10 I'm going to assume that the Android 21 player is going to have their Unison, so my tokens that they give me aren't going to be able to attack for probably the rest of the game after that point, right? So again, I'll leave them at 5, and then as the opponent at 21, when I'm ready to go in and do a bunch of damage, the 5-0 is a classic Dragon Ball Super tactic where you're trying to put a lot of pressure on the opponent and give them a really hard time. So in this situation, that's what I would do as the opponent. But anyways, going back 21's turn, let's say we untap everything. We go to charge. We want to charge our check land because why not? This is a check land specific to 21, of course. So we'll charge that. And I talked about it a little bit before. We have the perfect turn 2 combo. We don't have the Unison, which is a little bit unfortunate. And that is actually, if we had the Unison, let's just say instead of this beautiful scientist, that would be even better. But we don't, so we'll play without it. So we play Vegeta Energy Absorber on 2. Probably not going to attack. Like, if our opponent has Self-Awaken built into their leader, probably just let them awaken themselves just to slow down the pace of the game. We're playing 21. We're playing control. We don't really want the game to go too fast. So that's probably what we'll do. We'll pass back to the opponent. We'll get an untap and a draw off of Vegeta. They'll get 2 more tokens. So they can actually rush us down with tokens here if they wanted to, since we don't have the Unison. And we'll kind of account for that in just a bit. So let's just say they attack with their leader here, right? We're going to negate with Restoration. And we are at somewhat low life. So like using Restoration, if we were at like 7 or 8 life, that would feel a little bit more bad. But being at 5, I think that's generally okay. And we're going to play Energy Amplification here, right? So we're going to draw 1 to play. We're going to ramp that energy. And now here's the other thing, right? So let's say we didn't have the Vegeta on that 2. I'd probably just straight up play the Energy Amplification, right? Like, if I didn't have Vegeta on my own turn 2, I personally would probably just play the Energy 16 Amplification on my turn 2, because I have nothing else to spend my offensive energy on, right? Even though I have Restoration in hand, that's a card I could have just kept in my hand if I didn't have this whole play, right? And this is, technically neg to use this negate, play Android 16. I am losing a card out of my hand, but Vegeta Energy Absorber fixes that issue. That's why this combo is so good. Again, if I didn't have Energy Absorber, I would just play 16, and if I didn't have 16, I would just play Energy Absorber, draw up as many cards as I possibly can throughout the course of the game. Hopefully it lives long enough to draw 2, 3, 4, 5 cards, and that would be ideal. But here again, we have the ideal combo. Now again, we don't have our Unison, so our opponent does have the option to rush us down with tokens, right? So let's just say they do that, right? Let's say they attack with a token, we take a life, we go to 4. Now we got a few options here. Let's say they keep rushing us down. We pretty much have no choice but to awaken. But since we have 3 energy, we could be greedy here And we do have Baby Hatch, but there are other ways you can do this, like with the Sensu Bean or other cards in your deck, right? If we wanted to really just negate all of the token swings, we could Bean here if we had it. We'd also have to have an available energy, so your turn would have had to gone a little bit differently. But basically, the point of doing that and greeting there is so that you can get a double draw. You can draw off your unawakened leader and then your awakened leader once it comes back to your turn. In this particular scenario, we're not going to Baby Hatch. It's just way too greedy. I'd rather say Baby Hatch for a much more impactful point in the game. And we don't have energy to use Sensu Bean, nor do we actually have Sensu Bean in our hand. So they attack with the second token. We probably just awaken here and draw 2. But if you can stall your awaken by, you know, using a bean, or if they were playing something super fast like a red Broly maybe, then Baby Hatch here would actually be very good. But neither of those situations are present. So we just awaken, we draw 2, we basically nullify the rest of the token attacks for the turn, right? So now it comes back to our turn, we draw, we untap everything. We want to throw an energy down. Now here's the thing, right? We do have a decent amount of blue-greens in our hand, but we also have to kind of figure how much energy are we actually going to use on our next turn, right? And from the looks of our hand at the moment, I really wouldn't say we're going to use a lot of it. So actually, I don't think anything in our hand actually is going to require much energy at all. So I think in this exact scenario, I'm going to charge another Bad Omen tapped, right? I'm going to use my leader skill. I'm going to pop a token, put it over here for now. I'm going to draw a card, and that is going to allow us to untap this energy at the end of the turn. That's another thing to keep in mind too. Like sometimes you'll charge like manual blues in this deck, and you'll be tempted to use those instead of the blue greens because, you know, you want to keep your flexible energy open in case you need a green effect or whatever. But you actually only untap blue greens, so you want to make sure you're using at least one blue green on your turn, right? So nicely enough, we actually drew the unison off that, so we play it. We uptick it, of course, so that goes to 3 markers. Now, this is a little bit late. Of course, you prefer to have this on turn 2 or turn 1 if you're going second. But 3 markers is still not bad. And the nice thing about our hand is we have SS2 Trunks Heroic Prospect to defend here. Now, another thing we could have had on this turn, right, that would have made this a little bit different. Let me find it really quick. We could have had Android 16 Steadfast Ally, right? So let's just say this is in our hand. Let's just say we put this 21 back. Let's say Steadfast Ally was in our hand. We play 3 to 4 copies, so it's not unrealistic to have it. We go to our opponent's turn, we untap here, they do their stuff. They're on turn 3 now, so their deck can definitely be ramping up. We do get a draw off Vegeta as well if they couldn't kill it. So, oh, I didn't shuffle when I did that actually, so let me just shuffle up real quick. Draw a card. All right, cool. So, now, going to their turn 3, they might be able to do some pretty aggressive stuff. Like, I'm kind of imagining I'm playing against like Mecha Frieza or like Blue Yellow Kid Gohan. Something more mid-range that's not super hyper aggressive, right? So let's just say that's going on. Now, they attack into us. We can then arrival by, you know, super comboing or whatever we have, and we can play Steadfast Ally. We can tap 4 for that. So we arrive Android 16, right? And we already have Beautiful Scientist in our hand, which is ideally the card that we want. So we go into our deck, we search for any Android 21 that we want, and in this case, you know, since we already have Beautiful Scientist, we can search for Bad Omen or we can search for Destructive Villain. I do tech a Destructive Villain in my 21 deck just in case I need to board wipe my opponent, right? So we'll add that to hand. We'll play the Beautiful Scientist, so we'll shuffle up. She pops a battle card, looks at top 7, and then we get to ramp a card from that top 7. Do we hit a Bad Omen? It doesn't look like we do. So ideally hitting Bad Omen here is going to be the best case scenario, but we don't. So I'll just take another copy of Android 16 Energy Amplification, put that in the energy. It does come in tapped, and we do have to invert it. So that puts us to 5, right? And now we have like a blocker for our opponent's turn, right? They attack with another big guy. We block it. This isn't in a super ideal scenario for every matchup because we are tapped out, right? So there could have definitely been a universe where you need to, instead of doing this play, you need to SS2 Trunks Heroic Prospect. And that's totally fine. You know, it really just depends what your opponent's doing, what the situation calls for. But I'm just, you know, kind of using this example of we're playing against a slower mid-range deck and we're able to, you know, take time to do what we need to do. But there's definitely many decks where you're going to need to use this Heroic Prospect instead of doing this play that I just mentioned. But the cool thing here is actually against decks that I'm talking about where Heroic Prospect would have been necessary, you could have used Prospect. And then let's say they kept on attacking, right? You actually have a Sensu Bean to untap, and then you could have done this whole arrival play anyway and set up a blocker that pops a battle card. So you can see where the different play lines and the different branches go off, right? But anyways, going back to our turn, we draw, we untap, we drew a check land. That's great. We charge that. This puts us at 6 energy. We're still 2 energy short of Android 17 and 18 Siblings Revive, but we have so much energy to work with. And our board's looking pretty good, right? Let's just say we had to block with Scientist, right? So maybe she's in the drop area. We've got our units set up to 2. We've got a 25k double striker that's going to attack our opponent and make them pitch a card. Our leader's a 15k swingers now, so if they're at 4 or less life, we're putting pressure on. We've gotten 2 draws out of Vegeta, so if we really wanted to, we could attack with this. You don't necessarily have to, though, if you want to keep it safe and alive. If we go back to our opponent's turn, you know, we're not quite ready to use our, you know, boss monster yet, but we could even next turn use 7 energy to burn them for 2 Android 21 Bad Omens. So you're kind of seeing how the deck's going here. You're kind of seeing how we're trying to ramp as much as possible. We're trying to play as much effective defense as possible. And we're trying to get to one of our 2-win comms. We're trying to get to Android 21 Bad Omen, burning them as many times as we need to with Super 17 Hell's Ultimate Weapon. Or we're trying to get to 8 energy and play Android 17-18 Siblings Revive, which I think is an excellent boss monster for the deck. But anyways, guys, that's going to wrap up today's video. I do hope this kind of helped you in terms of figuring out how to play 21, how to pilot 21 effectively if you enjoy the deck. Even if you don't enjoy the deck, I hope this kind of helps you figure out some ways to maybe counter it, interrupt their play lines, things of that nature. But guys, anyways, thanks for watching. I'll see you next time.